B'tvach, learning as refuah shlema filan chaya baserach. We're going to go back a little. We're going to review quickly. We saw we saw the machlokes in the Mishnah, right? We say that most karbanos yidu shaloi lishma are kosher shaloi l'bayim shem chayva. Chatas and Pesach are pasul. Then we brought Rabbi Eliezer, who says that Asham, in addition to Chatas and Pesach, Asham is also pasul. So we're going to start back from the two dots. I know it's a ways back, but we're going to go through quickly. This is basically a long brisa giving three different reasons for Rabbi Eliezer, and the Gemara is going to go through all of the reasons. So without remembering what the explanations of why Rabbi Eliezer says the Chatas is l'shem Asham and what the Shakal V'Tari was, will be hard to understand the following Gemara. So Tanya, by the two dots, 8 lines up on Yud Amud Aleph. Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer, Chatas Ba'al Chet v'Asham Ba'al Chet, Ma Chatas Shaloi L'Shma Psula v'Asham Shaloi L'Shma Pasul. Rabbi Eliezer says a very simple memotzinu, it's binyanav, that Chatas and Asham are very similar. So for Chatas, the din of Shaloi L'Shma is Pasul, Asham will be the same. Amalei Rabbi Shua, who disagrees, he says the Asham is not Pasul Shaloi L'Shma. He says, no, you can't compare them because dam l'maylo, the dam of the chatas is spritzed on the top part of the mizbeach, whereas other karbanos are on the bottom part. The only exception to that is oilos ha'oif is also on the top part, and that will come up later in the Gemara. But generally speaking, other karbanos have a kula that they're lamaita. I don't know why lamata is less chamer than lamayla, but that's the Gemara's understanding. Amalei Rabbi Eliezer. So Rabbi Eliezer said, "Okay, so you have a kasha on my limud from Chatas. But I'll tell you, I could learn that from somewhere else. I'm like, Pesach I prove from Pesach. Shedamei lamata. The dam of the Pesach is lamata, like everything else. V'shachtu shalai l'shma pasul. So you see, the fact that dam is lamata is not the reason why by a Chatas it's shalai l'shma pasul. Amalei Rabbi Yeshua, Mala Pesach zmani kavua. Can't bring no. Pesach is different. The reason why it's lamata is because the reason why Pesach, even though its dam is lamata, the reason why maybe it's shaloi l'shma pasul is because it's at a set time. It's every year at the same time. Chatas I'll prove from Chatas. Chatas is not zmanik kavua. So you can bring it out. You said you don't want to learn out from Chatas directly, but we can learn out from Chatas together with Pesach. Only Rabbi Yeshua chazrani chalila. He said, "Okay, I'm stuck. There's nothing to be done with this." So he said, "You can't learn out of Asham from Chatas because you're going to try from Pesach. So I'll have my kasha on Chatas. The Chatas is dam l'maylo, and Pesach is manik kavua." Chazer b'lezer v'dana dinacher. B'lezer did not say a tanashava, but rather he said another svara. So that was the first svara is dam l'maylo, and he asked on that from Chatas. He wanted to learn it out directly from Chatas, and he answered back. He asked the kasha. Rabbi Yeshua asked on that the dam is l'maylo. Chazer b'lezer he wanted to learn from a different place. Dinacher Chatas nemava he. We take out the word b'shchita according to the sheet, and I think that makes sense. Nemra ba he l'shma ksheira shaloi l'shma psul. It tells you by a Chatas only it is l'shma kosher, but shaloi Pesach nemra by who b'zvicha. Take out the word zvicha. Hu l'shma kosher shaloi l'shma pasul. Af Asham nemra by hu l'shma kosher shaloi l'shma pasul. They all have in common the extra word hu. So just like by Pesach and Chatas where it says hu, that it has to be l'shma or otherwise it's pasul, I'll tell you the same thing by an Asham. Amalei Rabbi Yeshua, Chatas nemba hi b'shchita, hi l'shma ksher shaloi b'shul. Pesach nemba by hi b'zvicha, hu l'shma kosher shaloi b'shma pasul. We had brought this earlier when we were trying to say what was the reason why it says who by Pesach. We wanted to say it's not by Chatas. So we wanted to say that you need it for this limud, but it's a contrast. Pesach and Chatas, the word who is referencing the shchita. The shchita has to be l'shma. The part of the pasuk where it says who, Asham who, is saying that you have to be makta the emurim. Kosher. The haktaras emurim itself is not makav. You didn't do the haktaras emurim at all, it's not ma'akev. So you can't say the who is coming to tell you it has to be lishma if the avodah that we're talking about over there is not ma'akev in the first place. You certainly can't say that something that doesn't have to be done at all, if you do it shaloi lishma, is going to be possible. Again, Chatas and Pesach, the who was said in reference to the avodah of shchita, which if you skip it is going to be possible. So therefore, if you do it shaloi lishma, it's possible. Again, by Asham, the who is not able to tell you shaloi lishma is possible because it's talking about hektar semurim, which is not an avodah that has to be done at all. It has to be done, but it's not makah. So that we come to a third pshat. Amalei Rabbi Eliezer harayuayim kachatas ka'asham. Ma chatas shaloi lishma pasal av asham shaloi lishma pasal. He says it's not a binyan av. We don't just say that chatas asham is like chatas, but rather it's a hekesh. The Torah says kachatas ka'asham in the pasuk. Hakoyin hamachata oisa yechlane b'makom kadosh teichel b'chat. I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. Chatas ka'asham teirachas lehem hakoyin asher yichaper boy lo yiyah. So it says chatas is like asham. Ma chatas shalish my pasal, af asham shalish my pasal. Okay, I think that's where we got. I'm not sure if that's where we got to. We got a little further. Amar ma, Amar Rabbi Yeshua, Chazrani Chalila. Rabbi Yeshua accepted. He said that you can't learn out from chatas and from Pesach because chatas has a mila that its dam goes on the top half of the mizbeach, and Pesach has a mila that's kavua, so you're not going to be able to learn out from them to Asham. In fact, the Marvel had the din of Elaisi b'matzad. Why don't you make a matzad from the two of them, from chatas and from Pesach? So mishum dekel mifrach malat tzad shalosh shehen shechen yesh ben tzad karus. Both chatas and Pesach have a tzad karas. We say it's tzad karas. We don't say chiv karas. Pesach is an essay. It's not the carbon Pesach is not being brought as a kapara for doing a karas. So it's not precisely the same thing as a chatas. Like a chatas and ashram are being brought for averis. A chatas is brought for a aver that has a karas, and ashram generally is not. But Pesach, there's a karas if a person is mevatel the essay of Pesach. So Rabbi Shua, okay, so we accept that. That's finally that's the reason why we didn't say Tzad Hashama. Now the Gemara goes back to the Brisa. Rabbi Yeshua had said, let's learn it out from Chatas. So he said you can't learn out from Chatas because Chatas, the dam is Lamaila. So he says, the Gemara is going to bring a series of reasons, additional reasons why a chatas is more chomer than an asham. Why did he pick this thing that it's dam l'mayla? Let's say chatas that there's such a thing as a chatas hapnimi, where the dam of the chatas gets spritzed on the paroiches. It's like the Mar b'chatas chitzainis coming. We're not talking about those chatois. We're talking about the chatas chitzainis, which is no chatas of lefnim, so therefore that's not a chumrah. What about shem nichnas dama lefnayim psula? Why don't we say a chumrah of chatas over asham, that if one brings the dam of the chatas into the heichel, that passes. There's a pasuk that tells you this. Where's the pasuk? So I think it's on. Any carbon that the dam is brought into the heichel, right? The dam, all these avodas that we're talking about, in regular carbon, the whole avodah takes place. The whole avodah takes place in the outside part, in the chotzer, where the mizbeach hachitzin is, the big mizbeach. The mizbeach hazav was not a place of bringing karbonis and generally and shechting them on it. So there's a din that this pasuk says that if you take the dam of a chatas, kol chatas, that you bring its dam into the mizbeach, it's gonna into the heichel, it's gonna passel the carbon. So let's say. That's the difference. That's legabe chatas and the and the asham. I feel a little bit bad. My daughter just tried calling me to tell me the name of her new baby, but
Wow.
I say it'll be too disruptive. I'll have to speak to her in a half hour.
I'm okay waiting a minute and a half, guys. I don't know about the rest of you guys.
No, it's okay. It's for me. I can't like get into something else and then come back. But in case you're curious, the name is Ahuva.
Beautiful.
So it was very funny. She called us up an hour before Shabbos to say she decided to give the name Batsheva after her husband's grandmother. Then she called us up about a half hour later that she found that that's not the grandmother's name. And then she said, we're going to have to think about it. And that was where they left it before Shabbos.
Yeah, I have a similar story, so I shouldn't laugh too hard.
Yeah, you have stories where they found out after they gave the name.
Yeah.
Yeah, in any case, okay. So let's say the chumrah of chatas, like we just said, the pasuk of chatas tells you that if you bring the dam lefnim is possible, but that doesn't apply by asham. So the Rebbe half asham. The Rebbe holds that asham also is going to be possible if you bring the dam lefnim, like we're going to see later on. You learn that from chatas. Why don't we say the chumrah of chatas over asham that's mechoyev on chayvik krisis, while asham generally isn't? So chatas to shmias koil, chatas is not on chayvik krisis. So mechatas to shmias koil. One of the chatas that we know well from back in Shavuos is the chatas of Eilev Yared, and one of the chatas of Eilev Yared is shama koil Allah when you try to get a aid to say Eidos and he lies and he says he doesn't know it. There's no chiv karas on that, and nevertheless there's still a chatas. So a chatas is not exclusively brought for a chiv karas, so therefore that's not a milo. What about shechentuna arba matanis?
Which is interesting because we said earlier when we asked why doesn't Yeshua do it? Why don't we do a ma'atzad?
Yeah. Right. So they say that this Taisa says that you only need a percha koldehu to frag up a mehatzad. Now, if you're trying to learn it, you could say that doesn't have that milo. Let's say another thing that he could have, Rabbi Shua, all these are just prospective reasons in addition to the reason that it's like we're going into a lot of detail on something that we already have an answer. Saying, why didn't he answer something else, a different mile of chatas over asham, that it needs arba matanis? As they're going to learn, if you ever have a chance to look at the introduction in the art scroll, at the beginning of the summary, there's a number of different ways to apply the dam to the mizbeach. The chatas requires arba matanis. You do on all four sides of the mizbeach. The asham only needs two matanis, which is shtaim shein arba. You put them on two corners and it covers the two corners. But it's a difference. One has four spritzes of dam, 4 zrikas dam, and one has only 2. So we're going like Rabbi Shmuel. He holds all the dam needs. It's the shtaim shein arba is really 4. That means it's even though it's going to the corner, you don't do it just in one zrika, but you do 2 separate zrikas, so it's also arba matanis, the same as the chatas. Practic Gemara al arba kronos. What about the fact that the dam of the chatas goes on all 4 kronos? I mean, you do 1 on each keren, and according to even if you say you need on the separate sides of the keren, which is shtaim shein arba, so Rabbi Shmuel says you need 4, but it's still only 2 of the corners, not all 4 corners. So tomorrow, utamech. So he says back to him, you're asking on why did Rabbi Shmuel, why did Rabbi Yeshua pick that the dam goes l'mayla? You have all these other things, and you keep on answering. You keep on asking these questions. What about ha'ika etzba? There's also the fact that you do the chatas With the etzba, mashenkin, the ashram is thrown directly from a kli. Like a karen, there's a requirement that it be on the corner, which is not on the corner, on the part that sticks up on the top of the mizbeach. Mashenkin, the ashram could be even lower down. Ha'kachuda, that has to be on the corner, while it's not necessary that means by the edge of the mizbeach, which is not needed by the ashram. Elachad mitreit last time in nakat. Elamai, there are a number of questions that he could have asked. You keep on trying to say different ones, but there are others that he could have asked. So it's not a kasha why he didn't say the other one. Amar Mar. Back to the Brisa. Amar Mar, Amaloi, Rabbi Shmuel loy mamarta. Rabbi Yeshua said back to him, that the oila, you can't. Rabbi Yeshua said, don't learn out chatas to asham, because the asham, the blood is lamata, and a chatas, the dam is lamailo, so the chatas is better. Lemele Rabbi Eliezer, let Rabbi Eliezer answer back to him, asham nami dam lamailo. Maybe she should say, let's learn out from here, Taka. Just like we're saying that the asham and the chatas should have the same din, legabe shaloi lishmas pasul. Let's say also they have the same din, that the dam of the asham should also be lamailo. Amar Abaya, asham dam lamailo the matzah samrit. You can't say asham is dam lamailo. Kal v'chayim me'ayla, because I'll bring you a raya from the ayla. Umar ayla she kolol dam lamata asham sheina kolol lekol shekain. Ayla, it's fully consumed, nothing is eaten, and it still has a din. So, and it's still a mata. Certainly the asham, which is not fully burnt on the mizbeach, some of it is eaten by the kehanim. Certainly it's not going to be able to be lamaila. So no, I can't bring a raya from oila. You can't ask kavacham oila. Oila is not a mechaper. Asham and chatas are both mechaper. So chatas oif teichiach. I'll bring a raya from the chatas oif. A chatas oif, the dam is lamata. So certainly, if you're trying to say that the reason why the oila is lamata is because it's not mechaper, but the chatas is mechaper and it's still lamata. So it's not an animal. It's not a carbon that gets shechted. It gets malika. It's a different, lower form of kedusha. Oila techiach leroy zekaroi zeh leroy zekaroi zeh. Tzadeh shavashen shein kachei kachim v'dam lamata afan yevi yashim shu kodesh kodashim v'dam lamata. So l'chayr we have a matzad to explain why the asham is lamata. You can't learn it out from chatas. Amalei rava mipar zakya l'ravashi the livrach malat tzadav shavashen shein lehen kitzva. Time about asham sheyesh le kitzva. Says don't ask from chatas oif and oila that since they're lamata, we can make a matzad, and that's the reason why asham is also lamata. They both have a kula of a asham. That a asham, the Torah says a specific amount that it has to be worth a minimum amount. So that's a chumrah of asham that has a minimum amount that it could be. The Torah says it has to be at least 2 shekel, but there's no such minimum amount for an oila and a chatas oif. Elahani time of the Rebbe Eliezer. So Taka, why doesn't Rebbe Eliezer learn out chatas from asham from chatas? Legabe that its dam should be lamaila. When the Torah says that the dam of a chatas has to be lamaila, he says it with the lashon oisa, only it and nothing else. He says, if this whole thing is all coming to, we were asking a question that Rebbe Eliezer says you learn out asham from chatas, and now we got into this question so we said that the reason why he says you don't learn out the other man, the Amma says you learn out that he has a kasha that you can't learn out chatas, asham from chatas, because the chatas dam is lamaila. So he said, how does Rebbe Eliezer know that the dam of the asham has the man who's asking? How does he know that dam is lamata? But if you're going to say Isa is telling you only chatas has dam lamaila in that asham, then you say the same thing. It should tell you that asham also is also going to be excluded because of that svara of Isa. You can't say that it's going to be lishma. It's lishma pasul. So who oisa lav dafka? He says that oisa that it says legabi that requires that you need lishma by a chatas and shalosh shma is pasul. It's already not lav dafka. It doesn't mean just chatas. The shayar Pesach, like we know, Pesach is also shaloy lishma pasul. So Gemara nami lav dafka the shayar oilusayif. But so he says that if you're going to say that, then the oisa that it says by chatas legabi dama lamaila is also lav dafka, is also an exception to that. That the oilus haif is also lamaila. So Gemara bezvicha mi'elay shayim midi says no. When it says ois, it's only talking about legabi shechting. It's saying legabi shechting, the only thing that you shecht and put its dam lamaila is the chatas. The oilus haif, it's not a shchita, it's a malika. It's not in the same category. That's one teretz. V'ibay seima hamani Elazar Rav Shimon. He's going to Rav Shimon. The Amar hay makam lechud v'hay makam lechud. He says that the makam that you would put the dam of the chatas and the dam of the oilus ha'oif are not identical, even though they're both lemaila, they're both on the upper half of the mizbeach, but they're still not exactly the same. The Tanya dam matachtaim nitin michut hasirka lamata. All the other karbanos are underneath the chut hasikra, which is the line that goes around the middle of the mizbeach. And the ones that go on top are on top of that. Amr Elazar Shimon. Elazar Shimon says not everything is the same if it's on top of the middle of the mizbeach. The medvam oilus ha'oif. That's just the oilus ha'oif that can be anywhere on top of the middle of the mizbeach. Al chatas behema. He says that has to be all the way on the top by the horns or the protrusions on top of the mizbeach. So they're limited to being only over there. They're a higher level than the oilus ha'oif. So you can't say when the Torah says oisa legabe the din that the chatas has to be lamayla, it means bedavka only chatas is on the keren and everything else is underneath it. Even though the oilus ha'oif is also lamayla in the sense that it's above the half line, it's still not in the same place as the chatas. So the oisa is taka without any exceptions. Okay. Tanan Hasa. Rabbi Kiva Omer. Kol domim shenichnasu laheichel lachaper psulim. We're going to have three shitas in this. We said over there, we said that in the end we came to the conclusion, right, that the reason why Rabbi Eliezer says that Asham Shaloi Lishma is pasul, because we make a hekesh, right? We make a hekesh of chatas to Asham. Any dam that goes into the heichel, we had mentioned earlier this din that the chatas that comes into the heichel passes the carbon. Chatas volvad. That pasuk that we quoted before that says that you can't bring the dam of karbonis into the heichel. Talmud Kiva says any carbon this whole true. The Torah said it about a chatas, and it only applies to a chatas. So that's the chacham. Rabbi Eliezer says just like our Mishnah, he says asham and chatas are lumped in the same thing. So just like the Torah says chatas, and he holds not like the Rabbi Kiva that it applies to all karbonis, but he says it refers just to chatas as well as asham. Rabbi Eliezer includes asham as well. The Chum said it only includes chatas. Shenamak chatas asham. Like we just said, we just quoted from. This is how we explained why Rabbi Eliezer in our Mishnah says that the asham is shalei lishma pasul. So the same thing will apply the gabed din of if you bring the damim lifnim that it's going to pasul and it's like chatas asham. So Bishlam Rabbi Eliezer kedika amar taima. So Rabbi Eliezer explains this time that it comes from the hekesh. Al Rabbanan and my taima. Why do the Rabbanan disagree? Why don't they agree to the hekesh between chatas and asham? Amarava asham nichlas damim lifnim pasul le'matzas am. He says you can't say asham when you bring its dam inside, it's going to pass. We're going down the same road we went down before. We're talking about shalei lishma. It's a very similar type of thought process. So you can't learn out that asham from chatas that should be pasul because you'll bring a kavacham ma'ila. Ma'ila she kalal nichas dam lefnim kshera. If a oila which is entirely burnt up. And nevertheless, if you bring this dam lefnim, it's going to be kosher. Remember, we're not going like Rabbi Kiva who holds all the We're saying according to the Chachamim, we say it's only chatas. So Oila doesn't parcel the carbon when it's dam because of him. Asham she'ena kala like kol shekein. Asham which is not as chamer as Oila, it's a kal v'chayma. It's like marmal Oila shekein ena makaperes. No, like we said before, the same line of reasoning, and Oila is not mechaper. It's like minchas chayta teichiach. I'll bring you right. What about the minchas chayta, the mincha that we said by an oil of a yard, right? An oil of a yard is a carbon where you do a chait, certain carbonates, certain chatayim. It depends on how wealthy the person is, right? We said the gabi Thomas Mikdash Ugdashov and someone who refuses to say edus. So the mincha that is brought by those people, that's also nichnas lifnim. It's not going to be possible because there is no dam. I mean, one would say l'chayra that this is not a case. How could you ask a kash from it? It's not that the dam is not possible; it's that there is no dam. But the Gemara doesn't say that. So let's bring a raya from minchas chayta. Why are you asking from minchas chayta? Let's say a chatas oif. A chatas oif is at least a little more similar, that it has a dam from kmitza. So the Gemara chatas oif baya the Rebbe Avinhi. The chatas oif is taka a question. We're not 100% certain about that whether its dam is going to parcel the carbon if it goes inside. So therefore we ask from minchas chayta. So you'll say, well, minchas oif obviously is very different. How could you bring that as a kasha? They say that asham is not included. Minchas oif is not a carbon. Oila techiach. I'll prove for Mila. Chazar din l'reizek 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 l'reizek. Tzadov she'hen kachay kachim. V'nich l'fnim kasher nafani yevi. Asham shu kaidu kadar v'nich l'dame l'fnim kasher. So we want to say, let's learn out again from minchas chayta and oila that asham should also not be able to passel. Not unlike chatas, it should not passel when you bring the dam l'fnim. Amle ravami barnish. Again, asham always has a chumrah that it's the one thing that the Torah says a minimum amount that you have to pay for the asham. So he said we have to start again. So again, so why don't the Rabbanan we slugged up the Me'atzad? So you say there's no way to learn it from minchas chayta and oila. So why taka don't we say asham is learned from chatas, that the dam should be passel if it goes nafim? This is the reason for the Rabban. The amakra dama shel zu v'loy dama shel acher. The Torah in the pasuk says only its dam, not any other dam is going to passel. So only a dam chatas, not a dam asham. V'idach dama v'loy b'sara. He says the dama is not coming to exclude a different carbon's dam. It's coming to say only the dam, if it goes inside, passels the carbon, but not if the basar of the carbon goes inside. V'idach dam dama. He learns out from the fact that Torah could have said dam, instead it said dama. That tells you it's dam, so that tells you only this carbon's dam. V'idach dam dama loy darish. He doesn't learn dam dama. So that's the explanation of machlokes between the Rabbanan and Rebbe Eliezer. According to the Rabbanan who say there's a chelik between asham and chatas, that the chatas, so you bring its dam into the lefnim, it passes, and asham it doesn't. Haine de iskash mincha lechatas, mincha asham. That explains the brayta that we're about to see, which says that a mincha is compared in some ways to a chatas, in some ways to asham. The Tanya, Rishim Noimer, kodesh kadasham hi kachatas hu asham. The pasuk says that a mincha is kodesh kadashim like a chatas and asham. Minchas chayta harei kachatas. That a minchas chayta is like a chatas that levikach kimsu shalei l'shma psula. That will it's like a chatas that it's if you kaimitz it shalei l'shma, it's pasul. A chatas is shalei l'shma pasul, and a minchas chayta is also shalei l'shma pasul. Minchas nedava, but a different mincha harei ka'asham. It's like an asham levikach kimsu shalei l'shma kshera. Rebbe Eliezer, so this is really going back to our original. We're not even talking anymore about the machlekes Rebbe Eliezer legabe asham, whether it's dam in the cause of fnim. We're going back to the original question of asham sheloi lishma. is going to be possible. We're going back to our Mishnah. What does this pasuk mean when it's comparing a mincha l'chatas or mincha l'asham? He says both of them, according to Rabbi Eliezer, both of them are pasul shalai l'shma. So the Reb Shimon. He says this that this pasuk that compares the mincha to chatas and to asham is telling you a different thing. The Tanan shaloi b'klisharis psula. If someone brings a mincha, they would kaimitz the mincha into, instead of bringing it into a klisharis, they did the kmitza and they put it into his hand. The Tanakama says it's possible. You have to do it into a klisharis. And that makes sense. As we're going to see, the mincha has an equivalent 4 avodas, just like the 4 avodas of a dam. A dam has zrika, kabbalah, halacha, and zrika. So in place of the shchita of the carbon, you have the kmitza, where the person takes his fingers and takes out some of the flour. So that's the equivalent of shchita by the flour, by a mincha. And then when you take the flour into a klisharis, that's the kabbalah. Then you take that, you bring that klisharis and you put it onto the mizbeach. That's going to be the zrika. So according to Tanakama, if you left out the kabbalah into a kli, it's possible. Reb Shimon machshir. Reb Shimon says even if you put it into your hand, it's still going to be kosher. My time with the Reb Shimon. Why does Reb Shimon say like this? Amraka kodesh kadashim hi kachatas kosher. Mala avoida. Mala ovda biyad, ovda biyamin kachatas. But I'm sorry, Bala ovda biyad, ovda biyamin kachatas. If he does it in his hand, which according to Rav Shimon you're allowed to do, so then he does it, has to do it in his right hand, like you do a chatas. The avodah of the chatas has to be done with your right hand. Bekli, ovda b'smail kashim. But if he does it in his kli, then he could take the kli, this requirement that the kli has to be held in his right hand is only by a chatas, doesn't apply by an asham. So that's what we mean, that the mincha can sometimes be like a chatas, sometimes an asham, whether you have to, if you do it b'kli, whether it has to be in the right hand or the left hand. Depends if you do it. If you do it with your hand, then it has to be in the right hand. If it does it b'kli, it's like an asham that can be done with the left hand. Rav Shimon, haikra ma'abaklei lahachi, ma'abaklei lahachi. More says, but this is the l'chayr shver, right? We brought that Rav Shimon America the chatas kasha minchas chayta rei chatas. The figure comes shlo lishma, and then we say the second din. The Rav Shimon says it's coming to tell you chatas kasha legabe. You bring it with the kli, with the hand of the kli. You're saying you bring it for two things. So the Gemara no. The real din is really, like we said, the second thing that Rav Shimon's saying it for legabe. You could do it with your hand or with a kli. That was a minchas chayta is pasul shalai lishma. There's a reason, a different reason for that. Chatas time in my dechseba he minchas chayta nami kseba he. It comes from the pasuk because it said the pasuk says who, so we learn it out exactly the same way that it says he. So Gemara l'Rabbanan l'mai hilchas ishkus asham l'chatas. According to the Rabbanan who disagree. Why are we makash the asham to the chatas? Because they don't hold that shalei l'shma by asham is pasul. I'm sorry, no, this is the Rabbanan who argued on Rav Shimon, I think, right? So what are they going to do with this hekish? So it's coming to tell you that just like a chatas needs smicha, you have to lean onto it. Asham also is going to need smicha. Okay. Right? Okay. Shkoyach, we're going to start tomorrow. Hopefully I'll figure the next Gemara out by the time we start tomorrow at 10 to 8.
Yo,